Broken Kanu's way, and Dahui's right out of the centre. It's Kanu, what's he going to do? Oh! Can you believe it?
Hello Arsenal fans, and welcome back to a new episode of Can You Believe It, an Arsenal podcast. And this is the first podcast in a post-season world. There are no games going on currently. Well, there are football games going on, but there are no Arsenal games going on at the moment. So this is just going to be talking about Arsenal news, really. Everything that goes on in the summer. Now, obviously, everything in the summer changes at a rapid pace. So by the time this podcast comes out, things could have changed really quickly. But it's always good to talk about these rumours and always good to talk about what's happening with Arsenal in the Arsenal world over the summer. Everyone loves transfers, so hopefully we can talk about some of them as well. But the main objective of this podcast is to actually go back in time. It's to go back and talk about the previous season. And I know a lot of people, including myself, don't want to talk about last season because it was such a poor season for us. We obviously finished 8th again. The first half of the season, realistically, we were in a relegation battle. So people easily want to forget about this season very quickly. But I have got some awards that I want to talk about and some players that are going to get awarded some awards according to me. So if any of the players are listening, then congratulations, you've won certain awards. Some awards are not really that nice or that good, but everyone has to win worst player of the season sort of thing. So I'll read out the categories. Player of the season, young player of the season, goal of the season, worst player of the season, game of the season, surprise of the season, disappointment of the season, signing of the season, and then we'll round it off with grading Mikel Arteta out of 10. So I guess let's start with player of the season. So the Arsenal website put up 5 players that could be voted for player of the season. Now, obviously, my players that I'm going to mention are completely different for the most part anyway, but I wanted to mention it here. So you had Lacazette, Pepe, Kieran Tierney, Emile Smith-Rowe, and Bukayo Saka. So they were the 5 that were nominated. So I think the only difference is I wouldn't vote for Lacazette. He wouldn't be my 5 if I had to choose a 5. But I think it would go to Xhaka instead, just because I think Lacazette faded by the end of the season, even though he did score quite a few goals. In terms of different arguments, you can argue that Pepe has been the player of the season because he's got the most goal contributions. So if that's all you're focused on is end product, I totally understand the Pepe discussion. Smith-Rowe, he had been fantastic this season when he came into the side, but he only was in the side for half of the season, so it's a bit difficult to vote for someone like that. But I think for me, and the player who won the Arsenal.com version of it is the player of the season, is easy. It's Bukayo Saka. Now, Arsenal have struggled all last season. Arsenal were not good enough for large parts of the season. But one player who stood out the whole time was Bukayo Saka. Now, he didn't get the most goal contributions in the world. He finished with 7 goals and 10 assists, so not the most in the world. But I think his performances never dipped below good. I think he was pretty much good for the entire season. I think he had some really outstanding performances as well. He also carried a team which was struggling a lot of the time. I remember the rut that we were in November to December. We were on a losing streak, and then Saka produces a moment out of nothing with a great run against Southampton to set up Aubameyang for a goal. There was the moment earlier on in the season where Saka plays an incredible pass to Dani Ceballos, who passes it to Eddie Nketiah against West Ham. But I think his level went up when he got moved to the right wing. Now, last season, if you remember, I don't think he was really that impressive on the right wing. I always thought he looked quite isolated out on the right wing, and I thought he was much better on the left wing, maybe at left wing back. But on the right wing, he really gave it his all this season, and I think he was quite effective out there. He built a really good relationship with Emile Smith-Rowe, who was at number 10. They connect very well, and that's what it's about. It's about building relationships. He scored some crucial goals. He scored a fantastic goal against Chelsea. He said he meant it, so I'm going to believe him on this instance. Other goals included against Benfica, the equaliser in the first leg, which was key to getting us back in the tie, and the Slavia Prague goal, which was a really, really good effort, and he deserved it on that game. He played really well in that first half. He also set up the assist for Aubameyang in both instances against Benfica in the second leg, so he was crucial to our game plan, and he just had a really excellent season, which has been rewarded for him going to the European Championships with England. I think there was going to be a case where he might have been left out if Mason Greenwood was fit, but I think Bukayo Saka deserves his place, and it rounds off a fantastic season. He obviously scored his first England goal last week against Austria, which was a really great moment for him. He's had a fantastic season, and it's clear he was our player of the season. So to build on this, hopefully next season, he probably won't be here from the start because, again, he's going to the Euros. He won't be having the same pre-season as others. But when Pepe goes to AFCON, Saka's going to be crucial as one of our attackers. He will start coming into the season more. And obviously with less games next season, we have no European football. Saka's going to hopefully just be playing once a week and at top fitness. So it will be good for him. But he deserves our player of the season. It was no doubt in my mind. So young player of the season. Now Saka could win this award as well because obviously he is still very young. He's only 19. But I'm going to exclude him because I don't want him to win all the awards as easy as it could be. I think Martinelli is in for a shout. He obviously was injured for a bit, but he did come into the side and do quite well. So I was impressed with him. You could even argue someone like Joe Willock. I know he didn't do it much at Arsenal, especially in the Premier League, but he had a fantastic loan spell at Newcastle, ending with 7 goals in 7 games at the end of the season, which is terrific when you think about it. But I think there's only real one winner here, and it's Emile Smith-Rowe. Now, since Christmas, since Boxing Day, you guys know that Arsenal have been second in the league in terms of results, and Smith-Rowe has been a large part of that. Arsenal needed creativity when that Chelsea game hit, and yes, it was a bit fortunate in terms of Mikel Arteta had Willian injured, so he really had no one else to use apart from Emile Smith-Rowe. He used him at number 10, and it was just like a duck on water. Now, obviously, Emile Smith-Rowe has been around the first team for a bit of time now. He obviously broke through under Unai Emery in Emery's first season. He done really well in the Europa League that season. He was starting to build up into a Premier League squad. He obviously went on loan to RB Leipzig, but he was struck with injury, and it started getting worrying. In the 1919-20 season, he barely featured. He featured in a few Europa League games at the start, but he was still struggling with fitness a lot of the time. He wasn't really that effective. But it was the loan spell at Huddersfield which really got him on the radar. Now, for the record, I've been a supporter of Emile Smith-Rowe for a long time, especially after his first season in the first team for Arsenal. I always thought there was a talent there, and one that could be really effective for us. When he went on loan to Huddersfield, I think a lot of people were thinking maybe that's his level, but I always thought there was a talent there for Emile Smith-Rowe, and he just needed a run in the side and just to stay fit. And obviously he has had some injury issues, but I think he's been pretty effective whenever he's played. After coming in Boxing Day, he's struck up a great relationship with pretty much anyone he's played with. And obviously, it has solved our creativity issue a bit, even if it was helped along the way with Martin Odegaard as well. He's a fantastic talent. He's going to be the future of our club alongside Martinelli and Saka in that front line. It's really exciting to see where this goes. Hopefully it goes really well and we can continue with this. And to have two Haaland boys in the side is really good for us, and he totally deserves Young Player of the Year. He got 7 assists this season, which is really impressive, and then he got 4 goals. 2 in the Premier League, 1 against Chelsea, which was really good. He got 1 in the FA Cup as well against Newcastle, winner, really outstanding goal. I think goals will come more into his game next season. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets even more goals. I'm excited to see how he does next season, and I'm excited to see him in the side going forward. So next one is goal of the season, and obviously Arsenal haven't scored many goals this season, not compared to other goals, and obviously this is a pretty difficult category because obviously there are some goals that people like different to others. The Arsenal.com vote, the goal that won was El Nenes versus Dundalk, and even though that was a fantastic goal, that's not going to be my vote here. There was another El Neni goal that was good, which was against Olympiacos, which was a real smack, which was good. That's another honourable mention. You've got the Lacazette goal against Sheffield United, which was a really good combination play as well. Pepe against West Brom, which was just a classic Pepe goal. And Pepe against Crystal Palace as well. And then the other one against Dundalk, where he rolls it with his left foot and smacks it in with his weaker foot, which was a brilliant, brilliant goal. But I think the top 2 are between Tierney versus West Brom and Saka versus West Brom. And I'm going to go for Saka from West Brom. That goal was fantastic. It was a really good combination play between Smith Rowe, Lacazette and Bukayo Saka. The movement was good. What I loved about it is Emile Smith Rowe's pass to Lacazette, because Smith Rowe does it around the corner, but he doesn't just stop. He keeps on running, which sets up the move for Saka. Lacazette obviously plays it back to him, and Smith Rowe passes it to Saka for a tap-in. It's just a really nice, well-worked goal. And I love seeing goals like that. It's the classic Arsenal, really. The classic Arsenal goal. And I'm really pleased that it was also set up and scored by 2 Haaland Academy graduates. So it makes it that much sweeter playing that Arsenal way. It was a really exciting goal. So I'm really happy for that. And that deserves goal of the season. So now on to a bit of a negative, and it's worst player of the season. And I think this is an easy category to decide. I think some honourable mentions. Unfortunately, Aubameyang hasn't had the best season by his standards, but I don't think he's been the worst player of the season. I think that would be a bit harsh. You could also argue Dani Ceballos as well. I don't think he had been good, and this is coming from someone who really wanted him to stay last summer. He was really disappointing. But, I mean, let's not beat around the bush here. There's only one worst player of the season, and it's Willian. Even if you thought the deal for Willian was going to be bad, a 3-year deal for Willian, you thought the first season he would be decent. He would improve us somewhat. But he didn't do that at all. He was a disaster. It took very late until he scored his first goal, which was a free kick. He hasn't scored a goal from open play. I know we got a few assists. I think he got 7 or 8 assists, but I think most of them were very basic. He was just not good all the season. I think you can count the amount of competent performances on one hand. The rest were pretty awful. And hopefully we can move on from him this summer. There are reports that he wants to leave, which, fair play to him. I wouldn't leave if I was in his shoes with his wage packet. But fair play if he wants to go play football and he hasn't had a good time at Arsenal. Hopefully he does leave. We need to move on from this disaster of a signing. But it's pretty clear he was the worst player of the season. Game of the season. Now, we haven't had many. I think there are a couple of mentions. The Slavia Prague away leg after the first leg, which was 1-1, was really good. We blitzed them within 30 minutes, I think it was, and ended the tie, which was good. The West Brom game that I mentioned earlier was really good as well. The Manchester United away win, even though it was a bit lucky, it was always good to get an away win at Old Trafford. I mean, it was the first time in 15 years since we had got an away win at Old Trafford. And also the away win at Stamford Bridge later on in the season. Again, not the prettiest, but first time we had got that in 10 years. But I think there's one clear winner here for me, and it's the 3-1 against Chelsea earlier on in the season. Just because it was a very defining game for Arsenal, using these Hayland products, using these young players, but not because they were young and they deserved the chance just because they were young. They deserved the chance because they were good, and completely impressed on the day, which was fantastic. And I was really happy for them that they produced a really good performance. The goals were fantastic as well. The Saka goal I already talked about against Chelsea. I think the Xhaka goal was great as well, and obviously Lacazette scored a penalty. It was just a real well-rounded performance. I know we lost on XG that game, but it was about game state. We had blown them out of the water at 3-0. We probably deserved it to be 4-0. I know Frank Lampard was manager and he wasn't doing the best thing with Chelsea at that time, but it was a really good performance and probably easily the game of the season. So, surprise of the season is a bit more of a difficult award to present just because there are so many factors to a surprise of the season. I think you can say potentially how Arsenal performed at the start of the season was a surprise, not in a good way, of course. But I think my surprise of the season is probably the same as the young player of the season, and that's just Smith Rowe. Now, I truly believed that Smith Rowe could have made an impact in the first team, and I was proven right, but it was still a surprise for a lot of people, and a surprise in general how well he did and how much he improved us. So I think that is a bit of a surprise. Like I said, we had performed so much better with Smith Rowe in the side. I know the bar was pretty low anyway, but at least when he came in the side, we were looking a bit better and a bit more competent compared to what we did at the start of the season. So Emile Smith Rowe is my surprise of the season. Disappointment of the season. Now, I think it's pretty simple, but I do want to pay mention to Thomas Partey. I think he's been good whenever he's played, but I think with the fitness issues, and he has had some quite poor performances as well, I think potentially he could be a disappointment of the season. Obviously Willian, but I think that's quite an easy one. But I think I'm going to go with Aubameyang just because I think after the new contract got signed, a lot of Arsenal fans were really delighted and really thought he would be excellent. And he had a tough season. I think most of it was down to the coach playing him in not a good side with no creativity. He improved after Christmas. He had a really good XG per 90. He also scored a few goals. He did miss a few goals as well. But I think for the most part, he has been a disappointment this season. I know a lot of it has not been his own doing, but I still think it's worth mentioning that he has been quite disappointing, and hopefully he improves next season. Obviously, he's in the September of his career, if you like. He's getting on a bit, but hopefully he can produce something for us next season. We're going to need him, and he's still our captain at the end of the day, and we've got to get him that technical quality around him so he can get as many goals as possible. So, signing of the season. So, the signings we had made were Alex Runeson, Willian, Gabriel, Thomas Partey, Matt Ryan, and Martin Odegaard. And Danny Ceballos as well. So, I think for me, it's pretty clear who's signing of the season, and it's Willian, because Willian was fantastic, and I mean, he scored that great goal against... Okay, I'm joking. The signing of the season was Gabriel. It was pretty clear that Gabriel was the signing of the season. I think he was really solid, and the fee we paid for him was a really good fee, and it's a player who's pretty much solved our left centre-back issues. Obviously, we did have Pablo Mari as well, but I just don't think he's that good compared to Gabriel. I think Gabriel is our future at centre-back, and hopefully he can build a relationship potentially with William Saliba going forward. So let's hope for that, but he's had a good, solid first season, I think. Right, and finally, we're on to Mikel Arteta's grading out of 10. Now, if this was just based off half a season, then you'd probably give him a higher grade than what I'm going to give him now, but it's not. So I'm going to give him a 5 out of 10. I think when you look at the way we've shaped the season in terms of we finished 8th, so no improvement on last season. We got to the semi-finals of the Europa League, which was an improvement, but the way we went out was pretty awful. We got knocked out of the FA Cup quite early in the 4th round, so we didn't retain our trophy, which can happen, but it was disappointing how we went out. We got knocked out of the League Cup to Man City. The League Cup doesn't really bring that much prestige, but again, it wasn't really a good performance, and the game against Man City came in a run-in where we weren't really that good anyway. I think it came on the same week that we were just about to play Chelsea. So I think 5 out of 10 is being kind, because I think it's also remembering the end of the season as well, where he did improve, he did bring us further, but obviously he had situations with William Saliba. He wasted half the season without Ozil in the side when we needed creativity, and obviously it was the right decision to let Mesut Ozil go, but I do think that not solving that creativity is a black mark against him and Edu. Hopefully he can improve next season, and obviously, remember, he is a novice coach, he's learning on the job. You would like to think that he's learned from some of his issues and learned from some of the things that he got wrong this season. Not every manager is going to get everything 100% correct. Pep Guardiola is probably the best coach in the world, and he got the Champions League final really, really wrong. But you just want to hope that he produces more good moments than bad moments. And it starts this summer with transfers, and hopefully him and Edu can produce some really good transfers. But last season, he was poor. He's lucky to still have a job, if we're talking about that Christmas period where we were really bad. But hopefully we can improve, and he can improve next season. Right, so that rounds off our awards section of the podcast, and hopefully you've enjoyed all those awards that I've handed out. If any of the players are listening, then congratulations. The awards will be on the way to you in the post. But let's get on to the next part of the podcast, and we'll talk about transfers. So the first transfer is obviously talking about the Emi Buendia situation. Now, I came on this podcast and talked about Emi Buendia as a really good option for Arsenal. I think I've talked about him many, many times. And I was really excited about the prospect that Emi Buendia may join Arsenal. But reports came out this week, and it's now been confirmed that Emi Buendia is joining Aston Villa instead. Now, a lot of Arsenal fans have not taken this well. I think I can say that lightly. It was a tough one to take. I'm disappointed that Emi Buendia is not joining Arsenal, but I think we need to consider that the window hasn't even opened yet. There's still a long way to go in the window. We know Arsenal are not the quickest out of the blocks in terms of transfers. We all would like Arsenal to be quick out of the blocks with transfers, but we tend not to be. And also, this doesn't mean that we're just not going to sign a creator as well. I've still maintained that Martin Odegaard is probably our main target, and it looks like with reports from The Athletic that he is our main target. It makes sense because Buendia also plays on the right wing. We have an abundance of talent on the right wing, but we need a number 10. And if Martin Odegaard somehow rejoins Arsenal, and I really hope it does, then the Emi Buendia situation will be forgotten. And it is disappointing, and obviously we missed out on the target. The fee that went around was near 40 million, which is quite expensive, but probably worth it in the long run for him. He's a really good player, and I hope he does well at Villa, but I hope we just get our business done, and that's the most important thing, is getting our business done, getting what we need, because we need a lot this summer. And as long as we do that, then hopefully Arsenal can move forward, and hopefully we can keep building on what was a good end of the season. But the next transfer situation I'm going to talk about is Granit Xhaka and the Ruben Neves deals. So Granit Xhaka is obviously rumoured to be leaving. He's quite close to joining AS Roma and joining Jose Mourinho, which makes me want to throw up, if we're being totally honest. And the replacement for Xhaka would be Ruben Neves from Wolves. Now, let's firstly talk about Xhaka. I think the opinions on Xhaka are so strong. You either absolutely hate him, you think he's the worst player in the world and he needs to get sold, or you think he's one of the best players in the team and Mikel Arteta can't do without him. I'm somewhere in the middle of this. Now, not a lot of people here think I'm a great Xhaka fan, and I'm not. I'm going to be honest. I'm not the biggest fan of Granit Xhaka, but I think he ended the season well. I think he built up a really good relationship with Thomas Partey. I think he's really good at progressing the ball. He's a really good passer. I think his limitations are really just more about mobility and him losing his head. And I think both of those things, unfortunately, can't be trained. You can't be trained to be more mobile. You can't be trained to not lose your head. But I understand the reason for selling him. And I don't think it's because Arsenal want to sell him and upgrade on him with Ruben Neves. And we'll talk about that situation in a minute. I think it's more that the player wants to go, and I think this is a good fee for him. I think for a player who's got 2 years left, who's 28 years old, who is being sold in a COVID market, this is a good time to sell. 20 million, what we've reported to be getting for him, is a good fee. I see a lot of people saying we're selling him for too low. We're not good sellers at all. But I think we're not going to get that fee next summer if we decide to sell Xhaka. He'll be a year older with a year less on his deal. We won't get that fee next summer. It will be more 15 million max, if not 10 million. Sometimes you have to sell players before you want to get some good money for them. If the whole world knows that you want to sell these players, then you're not going to get good money for them. So I think Granit Xhaka being sold at that price was probably the right thing. And I wish him well in Italy. He's had some really good moments for Arsenal. He's had some really bad moments. But I wish him well. I hope he smashes it in Italy. Obviously, I hope he doesn't fall in love with Jose Mourinho or anything. But Roma's a really interesting club. They'll love him there, even if some of the Roma fans, I think, are a bit disappointed that Xhaka is the player that they're getting. But I think he'll be really good and really fun in Italy, so hopefully he does well. But the replacement that Arsenal have been touted with is Ruben Neves from Wolves. Now, Wolves apparently want 40 million, but I think they would accept 35 million personally. Now, I've been thinking about this for the last couple of days. It is very difficult for me to put this out. I don't think he's an upgrade on Xhaka. I think he does a lot of good things. He's a decent passer, if not as progressive as Xhaka. I think he's a good tackler, unlike Xhaka. I think he's a bit more robust in that mould. I don't think he's more mobile than Xhaka. Well, even if he is more mobile than Xhaka, it's not by much. I think he shoots too much. He has about 2 shots a game, but they're from absolutely wild positions. So if you thought Xhaka's shot from outside the box bad, wait until you see Ruben Neves. The only encouraging thing is that we're getting rid of a 28-year-old for a 24-year-old, which is a bit more impressive because it at least allows Ruben Neves to potentially grow into a good player. The fee, I think, is ridiculous. I think if it was 30 million max, I'd be sort of on board with it. But 35 million to 40 million is going on a bit. And I don't think it's the smartest use of resources. It also doesn't sound to me like good scouting as well and good use of data, because I don't think that Neves would have been picked out by a data guy as a really good replacement and really smart use of resources. I think if Aouar, for example, and I know he's a different kind of player to Xhaka and Neves, but if Aouar was available for less than Neves, I would do that deal. I think Arsenal have pushed themselves into a corner with this central midfield target, because I think not only is Neves being linked, but so's Yves Bissouma, and they're both in the Premier League. They're both going to have a premium in the Premier League, a Premier League premium. And I think with the lack of resources that Arsenal do have these days, I think buying in the Premier League is increasingly difficult. Unless you can guarantee that someone like Joe Willock will get us 30 to 35 million, and then you're not getting that much of a loss from signing Ruben Neves, then fine. But if it was just Ruben Neves and no other midfielder, because I mean, if Xhaka wasn't to leave, it looks like he is, but if Xhaka wasn't to leave, we would still need a midfielder anyway. So if Xhaka does leave, Ruben Neves is just a Xhaka replacement. We still need one more body in there, because obviously Danny Ceballos has left. If, let's say, Neves joins, we would just have Partey, Neves and El Neni. I know Joe Willock can play at central midfield. I know Maitland-Niles can, but I don't really consider them options. I know Torreira and Guendouzi as well, but again, they will be sold. So we will still need another central midfielder if Xhaka leaves, because Neves is only going to be a Xhaka replacement. But I'm a bit underwhelmed by Neves. I don't think it's terrible. It's just a bit underwhelming. We'll see what happens. Obviously, a lot can change. Maybe we won't sign him. Maybe it's all agent talk. We don't know. But let's just hope that if Neves does join and Xhaka does leave, that we sign another midfielder and we still manage to fill in the other positions as well. So the last player I want to talk about in this transfer section is Onana. Now, he's the Ajax keeper. He's obviously had a ban, a doping ban, but that's getting reviewed at the moment. He's appealed that ban. That ban could be reduced until February, or it could last the whole season. Now, the thing with this ban is that he's not even allowed to train with his teammates, so he would have to train on his own. So if we're signing Onana and selling Leno, it would be a bit risky. But if we're signing Onana and keeping Leno, then I can sort of understand it. But the fee is under 10 million. He's a really good keeper. He would probably be an upgrade on Leno, if not now, but in the future. I think he's better with his feet as well, better with distribution. So I think it is an upgrade and a smart deal. So this is something that I would definitely welcome if Arsenal were to do it. Apparently Arsenal only offered about 2 million at the start, but Ajax are hoping for about 6 to 8 million. I'm sure we can get that fee and come to that conclusion. He'll be a really good signing for Arsenal, and hopefully his ban does get reduced and he can feature in the team. But even if it does get reduced, he's not going to be match fit straight away. So this is one to watch for Arsenal, and is one that I would like to happen. Right, so that's all the transfer talk for this week, and when we do a podcast next, we'll talk about more about transfers. Maybe there'll be some other links and some other players that we're linked with. So I just wanted to briefly talk about the Euros, which starts this week. Obviously, I'm English, so I'll be supporting England, but for this instance, we'll be talking about the Arsenal players that are going. There are only 4 Arsenal players going to the Euros. Granit Xhaka for Switzerland, Bernd Leno for Germany, Kieran Tierney for Scotland, and Bukayo Saka for England. Now, I don't think Leno will get a game. If not, he won't be first choice anyway. I think Leno is just going to really be on the bench. I think he's behind ter Stegen, or I don't think ter Stegen's going actually. But he's definitely not first choice for Germany at this point. The other 3 will be interesting to see. Tierney and Xhaka will both be first choices for their countries. Xhaka's captain of Switzerland, and Kieran Tierney is one of the first names on the team sheet for Scotland. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with them over the tournament. I wish them both well. If not Tierney with Scotland, I obviously don't wish him the best against England. And Saka, he probably won't play much in the tournament. You wouldn't expect, because England have an abundance of talent in the forward lines. But hopefully he can get some minutes, and at least there'll be someone to support at the tournament. I always think it's important for Arsenal players to get recognition on the international stage. There's future Arsenal players potentially like Ruben Neves, who is there for Portugal, who could get some talent and could get some minutes and could be one to watch in the tournament. But I'm excited to watch the tournament, and the Euros should be fun. It will be a nice break from Arsenal, and it will be a nice break from normal football as well. I'm really excited to see what happens with the Arsenal players. I think if you were to ask me which one of the 4 will go the furthest, it probably will be Germany with Leno. But I think Saka and England have a good chance as well. And I think England have a good chance of going far in the tournament. But it depends who we get in the second round and if we can beat them. If we get Germany, which could potentially be a tie that we get in the second round, then I think it'll be very difficult for England to go through. But if we get Portugal, I think we would have a chance. So it's all about what happens in the Euros, and I wish all the Arsenal players well. There's obviously 2 players going into the Olympics as well, which is Gabriel Martinelli and Gabriel. So I wish them well as well. Hopefully they can bring back the gold medal for Brazil, which would be really good for both of them. But I just wish for all these players a healthy summer and for them to not get injured, especially players like Tierney and Saka, which are so important for Arsenal going forward. Right, so that's the end of the podcast. Thank you for joining me. I know it's a bit of a longer one today, but there was a lot to talk about. I had to do the awards as well as talk about some transfers and some Euro stuff. But thank you for joining me again. I will be back during the summer. I'm sorry this has taken so long for me to come back. I've been really busy at work. So if you've reached the end of this podcast, please like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell on YouTube to keep getting updated with my videos. Please share it. Review it on iTunes. Just wherever you listen to it. Thank you for joining me. And I will be back soon with another podcast. But until then, come on you Gunners.
Well, it's broken Kanu's way, and Hui's right out of the centre. It's Kanu, what's he going to do? Oh! Can you believe it?